Hello, everyone. Welcome to this session for the next 20 minutes with one of my favorite CEOs, Frank Slootman. Frank is the CEO and chair of Snowflake, one of the most respected and accomplished CEOs in enterprise tech. Very seasoned, best known name for taking large startups, incubating engines to well oiled operations, scaled operations, building large go to market teams, building large installs of clients, and more importantly, generating a market-driven, value-driven narrative before taking companies to public. Frank has done this 3 times as a CEO of Data Domain, then as a CEO of ServiceNow from 2011 to 2017, and then as a CEO of Snowflake. He took these 3 companies into public with very successful IPOs. Snowflake in 2020 was the largest software IPO ever, and it was the largest company to ever double its value in the first opening day, reaching to $75 billion of market cap. Thank you, Frank, for talking to our teams, and it's an honor to host you at Infosys.
Yeah, thanks, Ravi. We really appreciate you guys having us participate in the event. So good to be with you.
Thank you, Frank. So, Frank, I heard this the social channels about your start at Snowflake. I believe you were bored at ServiceNow. You wanted to kind of semi-retire, go back to sailing and yachts, which is your favorite hobby. I believe you wanted to get professional sailing into California, and then suddenly Snowflake happened, and you got excited about it, and you changed your path. So what's the exciting thing at Snowflake which really turned the trajectory for you to come back to the corporate world and create another successful venture?
That's actually a true story. I literally had no designs, no intentions on taking the helm at another company. I really didn't think how I could top the experience at ServiceNow, but I remember having meetings with Mike Spicer, who's the lead investor at Snowflake. From time to time, we served on another board together, and all of a sudden they said, what would it take for you to take the helm at Snowflake? And it totally surprised me because nothing had really led up to that point, and it sort of gave me a rush of adrenaline. And just thinking about the possibilities, Snowflake is an important company. They sort of threw away everything they knew about database management, and they wanted to redesign completely for cloud scale computing, cloud architectures, really not carry anything forward. And as you know, our founders were longtime Oracle architects and technologists, and they sort of had lived the problems of that generation, of platform, and really were eager, to rethink, reimagine, all those things. And it resulted in such a step function, if you will, in terms of technology platforms. We see customers, literally going, orders of magnitude change, not incremental amounts of change, but orders of magnitude in terms of complex workloads and ingest processes and so on. So all of a sudden, your mind just starts running, in terms of the possibilities. And so, I'm a sucker for great products. That's pretty much what I get up for in the morning. And all of a sudden, oops, I was back there again, and here we are, almost exactly 2 years later, right now.
So Frank, thank you for that. Thank you for that context. In fact, I think in many ways you are the visionary behind data cloud or data exchanges. And the last time I spoke to you, you mentioned about these 2 steps. Landing workloads on the cloud by itself is a big virtue, with untangling the legacy and everything else. And then data exchange part. Tell us a little bit about why you believe landing workloads on the cloud is such a big deal. A lot of our clients, joint clients, talk about it. That by itself is a big journey.
We often talk about that as the transition from Snowflake 1.0 to Snowflake 2.0, because it's very much a generational change. In the first 5 years, of Snowflake, once we started to really put product in the marketplace, was exactly what you said. It's a modernization move. We're taking on-premise workloads to the cloud to give them obviously enormous scale advantages, massive performance advantages, utility models, on and on and on. And as you well know, customers, for them, time is not their friend. They have to go sooner or later, and sooner is better than later. So there's a huge movement afoot to move A, data to the cloud, and B, then start enacting these database migrations. So at least we're on the cloud. We are now running our workloads in a completely different fashion than before. But that is not the end of the story. Snowflake 2.0 was really our vision of what else needs to happen, as part of this transition. I mean, if you look at the landscape of cloud today, we see massive infrastructure clouds, right, between AWS and Azure and GCP and so on. We have massive application clouds between Salesforce and SAP and ServiceNow and Workday and so on. And then we look at data, and we don't have data clouds. We have data massively fragmented and proliferated all over the place. Sometimes we refer to them as silos, but our founder, Benoit Dageville, refers to them as bunkers because they're so hard to penetrate. They're hiding behind networks and system and application perimeters. And that's a real problem. And the reason that it's a problem is, historically, most of our analytics has been what we call in silo. So we ran analytics on Salesforce and on SAP and ServiceNow and so on. But data science doesn't look at the world that way, right? It's trying to understand data relationships that completely ignore data silos. There could be completely diverse data sets that establish patterns as well as different types of data. And we have to enable that, or we never are going to see the real promise of data science, machine learning, and artificial intelligence. So my word of caution to a lot of large customers is don't start building the silos of the future. Okay, you really have to think about erasing the silos. Then you will completely unleash the potential and power of data science. And your data science teams will be grateful, that you had the vision and the foresight to do that rather than just bring your legacy workloads to the cloud. That's just not enough.
Thank you, Frank. In fact, every time I speak to clients, recently I spoke to two retail big box companies who had 70% growth on e-commerce in the last 1 year for obvious reasons. And suddenly their e-commerce profitability is much lower than their on-prem physical stores because their shipping costs are higher, their returns are higher, and they don't do trade promotion on e-commerce as much as they do in physical estates. So they are telling us, take this data estates, monetize it, and give me back money. Do you see that there will be a point when putting data warehouses on the cloud is no longer going to be a cost? It's actually going to be a revenue-generating work stream, especially in digital front ends.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely an awakening or a realization, out there that a lot of the businesses are sitting on incredibly, valuable data. For example, there's enterprises out there that are running tens of billions of fast food business, right? What do we think the data is worth that these people are sitting on? I mean, here they're selling hamburgers or whatever, but it's actually the data that could be extraordinarily, valuable. And retail, of course, running on incredibly low margins, but of course, sitting on incredibly potent data, especially when we can combine that data with other sources. I mean, the more we combine data, the more potent that data becomes. This is why the notion of a data cloud and data sharing is so instrumental in unlocking that value. It's just companies like sales or like Facebook and Google, they have a single cloud where the data is obviously incredibly powerful and has yielded enormous advertising efficiencies. But for the rest of us, combining the data will unlock tremendous amounts of value. Well, in order to combine it, we need to have an architecture that lets us do that. So all of a sudden, everybody's waking up and like, hey, there's a whole other revenue and profit center here that we could have. Same is true in big finance, right? I mean, large financial institutions, the credit card businesses. So we're incredibly data rich, but our ability to monetize it and combine data is still in the early stages. So that's really what this is all about, right? It's just unlocking the value of data and what you can do with it.
In fact, at Infosys, we call it the network effect of the cloud. And we are hoping that the data exchanges of Snowflake give us that opportunity to straddle the value chain and bring learned AI models, not just give away data in raw form, but learned AI models which will help them to do better operations. In fact, Frank, I wanted to allude a little bit about the industry transitions which are happening now. The energy sector is going through a transition where you have bidirectional flow of energy because of consumers becoming producers. Cars are getting connected. In fact, we did a very large deal in Europe where we are going to see connected cars. By 2030, half the car companies across the world are saying that they're going to go into connected cars and electrification. Manufacturing is going through servitization and platformization. 5G is moving telcos from B2C to B2B. In fact, 5G will disrupt a lot of industries with compute at the point of consumption and storage on the cloud. We spoke about retailers. They're all straddling the digital estates and trying to monetize. So all the transitions of industries, if I may, have a pivot. Data has a pivotal role in it. Can you tell us a little bit about how you see this industry transitions, especially as we get to the other side of the crisis, we'll see an accelerated path towards that transition.
Yeah, no, you're touching on something that is incredibly disruptive, both in terms of the opportunity that it provides, but it's also highly threatening to traditional enterprises, right? When you talk to large banks these days, they talk about companies like Square and Stripe and so on, who are the competitors. Amazon is threatening to be, not just in retail, obviously, but also in healthcare and logistics and other lines of business. So we just don't know how traditional enterprises and industries, what they're going to look like. Because under the influence of digital transformation, there might be a whole new set of players on deck. And that obviously it all starts with what are your systems, right? And what is your data? Data has become the beating heart of the digital enterprise. And we as a company have to, and you as well, obviously you have to meet people where they are. Some of them are very advanced. They're born in the cloud. They have all these disciplines and that expertise. They were really founded on cloud and digital principles. And there's others who don't even have the beginnings of a data platform or the beginnings of a data science discipline in their enterprises. They're still running reports and populating dashboards. Nothing wrong with that, but obviously this is far more disruptive and invasive than we can possibly imagine. So we really need to sort of have our peripheral vision here and really understand what's all coming at us and how these changes are happening. It's so easy now for consumers to change from one service provider to another because it's just a digital experience, right? I just go from one login to another, and all of a sudden, oops, I'm in a completely different realm. So, healthcare, that's another area where so much of the value of healthcare itself is going to be delivered through data, not through science per se. I mean, the science obviously is incredibly important, but what can data bring to the science is just enormous. And you can talk to pharmaceutical companies. They notice, right? And I'll give you an example, right? If we have an MRI scan, in our data cloud, what can be done, in terms of enhanced data processing to that MRI cloud by combining it with demographic data, with historical data, with other patient data, clinical data, so that we get very, very precise, very, very, very fast, very value added reads on these scans, right? So in other words, it's going to be life enhancing for patients because they're going to get much better, diagnoses, much more precise, much quicker, and much better therapies and treatments as a result. That's all because of data. That's not because of new science, right? And we see these opportunities absolutely everywhere. And it also leads to a whole new realm in software development because there will be people building these kinds of services. They're absolute experts at these types of applications, right? More microservice oriented, and they'll be used by lots and lots of different applications. So we might be on the cusp of just an enormous renaissance in software development here, which we're very excited about because the software development, it's all about scaling it down, where people with very minimal resources can create extraordinary value and then market that and transact on that, without needing massive companies and organizations to do it. Software has been a hard business to get into. It takes a tremendous amount of resource.
Absolutely, Frank. Those are great examples. In fact, I keep telling our clients that infrastructure is going to go big and software is going to go modular.
Yeah.
And you rightly pointed out. In fact, I had a slightly provocative question for you. The hyperscalers were investing heavily on infrastructure. In fact, between Google, Microsoft, and AWS, they spent almost $150 billion in the last 3 years just on building public infrastructure on the cloud, which companies like Snowflake can ride on. How much do you see? And they don't make, the economics of that is to actually build layers of value above it and build those marketplaces where all of us can straddle. But where do you see they actually moving up the chain over a period of time and start to compete with, best in class data platforms like Snowflake? They already are competing with you on one side, but they're actually on the other side, they're partnering with you. What is your view about they seeing this as a serious business opportunity for themselves?
Yeah, it's a question, obviously that we get all the time. The reality certainly for AWS and Microsoft is that their posture is we need to foster innovation and choice on our platforms, because if we're just going to try and build everything ourselves, and the only option that's available to customers is the option from the cloud platform itself, they may end up in a not so best of breed situation. Because how can one company build the best of everything? That just has never happened in the history of software. So you just cannot have a strategy, being Microsoft or Amazon, that says, well, your only choice will be what we offer you. And I think that both Amazon and Microsoft, based on my dealings with them, do have conviction around it. Does it sometimes lead to friction? Yes, but the friction is not bad. I mean, we like to say, steel sharpens steel. We make them better, and they have said so again and again. You make us move faster, and we're going to have better products because you exist. Now, it's obviously incumbent upon us to run hard and fast and furious, towards the future. But at the end of the day, and I hate using that expression, everybody's going to be better off, because everybody's going to end up with more innovation, more choices than they otherwise would have. So, we're looking for the win for the customer. If we're not the better solution, then we don't deserve to be there. And so our whole game is to be, that best option. That's what we bank on.
Thank you, Frank. That is so well said. In fact, we're going to find this situation always in the market where you're going to compete and collaborate with many enterprises across the world. How much do you believe data privacy regulation will come on the way as you put exchanges and you start to share consumer data across the spectrum of a value chain? Do you see governments now starting to react about it?
Yeah, data governance is one of the single biggest topics in our conversations with customers. I mean, 2 years ago, it was sort of an ancillary conversation. Now you see in large institutions that data governance is really the gating, between the data and the business. In other words, the organization, before the business sees any data in any form, they got to be able to ensure that the data is secure and compliant from various privacy and other types of regulations. So it went from sort of being adjacent to being in front of the supply chain, if you will. Data will not be getting to the business unless the institutions can guarantee and people can completely own the security and the privacy of that data. It's a huge topic of conversation, and it's one of the reasons that Snowflake has had an incredible run, because people, a platform like Snowflake, we know what's coming in, we know what people are doing. It's completely auditable, right? And it's so important that you have a platform where we know where things are coming from, we know who's using the data, we know where they're putting it, we know what they're doing to it. Those kind of capabilities are going to be non-negotiable going forward. It's no longer the Wild West of a data lake with, we're just dumping tons and tons of files in there, and people are sort of in a Wild West style, having their way with the data and having a nice time. Those days that can't happen. When you talk to large institutions out there for whom their brands are sacrosanct, there is no way, they will compromise or negotiate on their brand. And so, in other words, governance is number one, and performance and scale and all these other great things that we're talking about here. are coming after that. And that's sort of a change. And we have invested a great deal in our ability to implement data clean rooms, the ability to share data without exposing data between the sharing partners, and that has enabled, and we can anonymize the data, and we can maintain the compliance. We never relinquish custody of the data either. All these techniques that we now have as part of our architecture really enable different parties to share data, without getting compromised from either a security or a compliance perspective. So it's actually very promising that you need these platforms to enable these kind of data operations.
Thank you, Frank. Thank you so much for your conversation today. Every time I've actually spoken to you, I've always come out enriched with more learning, and you always inspire us in the corporate world. Thank you again for talking to our teams at Infosys.
You bet. And appreciate the opportunity. Thanks, Ravi.
Thank you so much.